Hi, I'm Christine from House of Smocking, and in this video I'm going to try and explain the problems people have had with the baby square yoke pattern. So here we have the pattern, and these are the contents. So inside you get the pattern pieces, but it's on paper that is printed on both sides. So you should be able to see it's printed on both sides. So you need tissue paper or tracing paper or pattern paper to trace off the size that you want, because also you've got multiple sizes. So by tracing off the pieces, it means that you've still got all the pattern pieces for the other sizes to use, unlike the ones which are multi-size and you have to trim away and then you lose all the other sizes. But you do need to trace off the pieces that you want. In addition to the pattern pieces, you get the instructions for the dress and also how to make it up for all the different versions. So one of the first questions that people ask is, where's the pattern piece for the skirt? Well, there isn't a pattern piece because it's a straightforward rectangle, and it'll show you on the cutting out layout that it is just a rectangle. But what it does do, it gives you the measurements for the skirt. So for the skirt width for a high yoke, so a high yoke dress is one like this, where the smocking comes up past the armholes, so it's a high yoke because it only comes up to that depth. If it was a dropped yoke, it would come all the way down to the waist. So for the pattern piece, I take this one. So if I was making a dress with a high yoke, like that one, then I would trace off this top part for the front. So I would trace off my piece for that, and then that, because that would be on the fold, is my short yoke. If I wasn't going to smock the dress at all, then I would trace off the whole piece, and then I would attach my skirt here, which would then give me what they call a dropped yoke, because it would be dropped to almost waist height. So to cut out your skirt piece, as I mentioned, there is no pattern piece, but there are measurements. So it suggests in the descriptions that working with 36 inches of fabric, so that's the width of the fabric, and then depending on the size and the type of dress, whether it's the day dress length or day gown or the long sack, which is this one, then it gives you the measurements. So if you're making a sack, well, I'm making, say, a 2 years, so my fabric would be 38 inches wide by 20.5 inches deep, and 27.5 inches deep if I wanted the longer dress. So that's for my skirt front, and if I was doing a high yoke, so you can see in this picture it's a very short yoke. So those are the measurements for a high yoke. So then we turn over to the instructions, and you'll find up here the skirt sizes for a dropped yoke. So a dropped yoke, as I mentioned, goes down to the waist, but this little dress has got a dropped yoke at the back, so it goes all the way from the shoulder down to the waist. So it's got a high yoke at the front, and it's got a dropped yoke at the back. So I take my pattern piece, my pattern, and because I've got no smocking at the back, I would trace off my piece right down to the bottom. So this piece would be like that. If you can see, there we go. That would give you a dropped yoke. And if I was doing a high yoke, that would be, because I've smocked at the back as well, so that would be the high yoke. So for the skirt back, for a high yoke, then it wouldn't be, see if you can see from the side, so the skirt front, I'll show you, goes from the piping there all the way down to the hem, but the back piece, the skirt isn't as long because the yoke comes down and finishes just where the smocking ends there, and so the skirt for the back is actually shorter than the front, but obviously the hem lengths finish at the same time. Another question I've been asked about is, it mentions using entredot, and this is entredot. I'll probably put it across my hand so you can see. And how you use entredot is you can use it to attach your fabric to the entredot and then your lace to the entredot. And I've used it here on the sleeves, I've used it on the collar, and I've also used it on the hem. So when it mentions attaching entredot, it's usually to attach lace. So it attaches your entredot to your fabric and then your lace to the entredot. It also mentions French seams, which I've covered in a different video, but where it mentions doing French seams, then that's doing your first narrow seam with the wrong sides together, trim it down, then fold it over, and do your second seam with the right sides together. So I'm hoping this has explained how you use this pattern, and the fact that why there's no skirt patterns, simply because there's just a rectangle. It does mention using 36 inches width of fabric. I found that was a little bit narrow for some of the fabrics I use, the Swiss fabrics in particular, for the larger sizes. And what you can do there is add a bit of muslin across the back of where you're going to smock and pleat up the two thick layers, and then that'll make your fabric go further and you'll get a larger size out of it. Hope this video is helpful for you. Thank you very much.